Ladies and gentlemen, Uniquely Unqualified Podcast, episode 11. Today is Friday, March 20th, 2026. Before I go any further, I would like to say happy birthday to my late father, Robert Scott Evans. Today he would have been 61 years old. My father passed last October at the age of 60. He had ALS for 7 years and he passed away of pneumonia early in the morning in October. We've got a bunch to get to today. I'm gonna go over Tulsi Gabbard. We're gonna go over Lauren Boebert, Qatar, a whole bunch of crap about Iran that we're all sick and tired of listening to. But before I get into any of that, please like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. I am very motivated watching everybody give me views and clicks. Thank you so much. So let's get into it. Tulsi Gabbard is rumored to potentially be resigning after the resignation of the director of the National Counterinsurgency Center, Joe Kent, resigned. So if anybody recalls, in one of the last episodes of Uniquely Unqualified Podcast, Take 2, I went over the resignation briefly about Joe Kent. I did want to bring to note that Joe Kent spent time in the Libertarian Party. After that, the Democratic Party from 2019 to, I believe, 2022, halfway through Joe Biden's administration. He then jumped ship and went over to the Republican Party 2022 to today. I raised concern about that because as an adult, as a man, I would suspect ideas change, things change. I understand that, but I would suspect you would have a little bit of consistency there in your politics, not spanning so greatly the entire thing, the entire spectrum. So the other thing I would like to bring up about Joe Kent again is that he was on Sean Ryan's show. And on Sean Ryan's show, he had stated not too terribly long ago that Iran was an imminent threat to the United States of America. And then he resigns and goes on Tucker Carlson's show and says that he resigned because Iran did not pose any imminent threat to the United States of America. I agree with Iraq not posing an imminent threat to the United States of America. Not only were we able to wipe out their airspace and their navy inside of a week, there was a bunch of talk about sleeper cells in the United States of America. Though we have had some attacks at the hands of radical Islam, I think one credible one, if you want to call it a sleeper cell, was the Austin shooting, where 3 people in a bar were shot, and the guy had a property of Allah shirt, an Iranian flag under that. I think that could be a credible sleeper cell. However, he only got 3. God bless the lives of the 3 people that were lost. However, when we look at the 2 young Muslim men in New York throwing IEDs that don't explode, and then a Muslim man in Wisconsin or Minnesota driving his vehicle full of firecrackers and jugs of gasoline into a synagogue only to kill himself and just start a fire, I would suspect that a very well-formed sleeper cell in the form and fashion that we are being told, legacy media, etc., you'd have a lot more funding and organization. I don't think that you would be throwing little mini bombs that don't explode. I think that you would have been taught how to make a handheld bomb that you could throw that would explode if that was an actual Iranian-backed sleeper cell. Same thing with the thing in the synagogue. I don't think you'd be flying into a synagogue with a bunch of bottle rockets and whistling Pete's. So I don't think that the sleeper cell thing has much merit until we see a giant attack on the United States of America. I think the sleeper cell thing was a bunch of bluster. There is also the fact that Iran, makes their drones out of literally balsa wood, paper mache, and old motorcycle motors. That's just not a sophisticated piece of equipment. So I don't believe that that Iran has posed any kind of a threat to the United States of America. So that much I will agree with Joe Kent. However, that flip-floppy nature, and then it comes out that it seems to be, and it could have been, that he actually was pressured to resign because he was kind of seen to be playing for the other team. So possibly never left the Democratic Party. And Tulsi running on no wars, no new wars. Trump running on no wars, no new wars, no regime change wars. And then Tulsi gets on board with the Trump administration. And though she is the director of national intelligence, director of Department of National Intelligence, that is intertwined with the war machine, she would not be considered a part of anything to do with the war in Iran because it's national intelligence, not international intelligence. I would imagine that based on principle alone, if this quagmire, if this giant mistake that is the attack on Iran, I'm curious if she would resign just based off of principle. It's a shame that, supposedly we struck their nuclear infrastructure last November, right? That was what this whole thing about Iran was about. From Obama to Trump is Iran and nuclear weapons. So it was supposed to be some form of a success back in November when we launched rockets into their nuclear infrastructure. Okay, well, if we got that, then we're done here, right? Well, now we have, following the likes of Marjorie Taylor Greene, Thomas Massey is still in, but he's not with Trump. Joe Kent is resigning, and now Colorado Representative Lauren Boebert is not going to be voting to pass any funding for this war effort any longer. I believe she said something about she's sick and tired of seeing American tax dollars go to things like this when we just very simply, we have problems at home. And we shouldn't be focusing on this. I agree with Lauren Boebert. So if the point was the nukes, and we got the nukes, what the fuck are we doing now? Well, surprise, gotcha. It was never about the nukes. It was about, we don't want that regime in there. This was always going to happen. It wasn't going to ever matter if Harris got in or Trump got in. This was going down. Absolutely. And the American people are exhausted with this. Exhausted with this. You see on CNN polls that'll say something like the MAGA base is 100% behind Trump. Well, they're playing with words there, right? They're saying the MAGA base, not the Republican base, the MAGA base. Well, define MAGA base. Is it the whole Republican Party? Or is it just the always Trump? Is it the blue no matter whose but on Trump's side? And the answer is it would be the blue no matter whose but the Trump version of them. It's not all the Republicans. As far as a giant thing about Republicans being for this, I don't see that. I don't see that. My veteran friends don't want this to go on. They think it's ridiculous. The American economy can't withstand something like this. Trump's already in enough hot water regarding the tariffs, right? And, you can't collect billions of dollars in tariffs, do away with federal income tax, and then spend all your goddamn tariff revenue, because it will be that, on another war going on for years. If we would have just gone in and within 2 weeks just fucked this up, maybe even taken it to the whole 4 weeks, but we're at 4 weeks, and nobody's surrendered. We shoved rockets up everybody's ass, but it looks like this is just getting more and more involved. A bombing campaign, fine, lasts 2 to 4 weeks. But like I said in a previous episode, the Marines do not need congressional approval to do a thing or go anywhere. And now we've got 2,500 Marines sitting offshore in the Persian Gulf, waiting to jump onto Karg Island or the Gulf side shores of Iran. And then just a few of them just because they're there now, we're in it for months. Just because they are there, we are in it for months. And then a couple of them get killed somehow through strikes, Iranian attacks, drones, missiles, God forbid, ground war with small arms engagement. But a couple of Marines die at the hand of the Iranian regime. Well, guess what? Now you can get congressional approval to send in the army. Now we have a full-on ground invasion, occupation. Now we're in it for years and years. And that just seems like that's where it's going. And so we are in hot fucking water with this Iran thing. It's just not as simple as the nukes. This has been in the play. This has been in the cards for a long freaking time. Long time. And it's only made worse because, well, we don't even really know, like, where are we? What's going on? It seems like we could have gotten behind a Mike Tyson uppercut in the first round. Like, oh yeah, we bombed the piss out of them, but we took their oil and we got it, and they're out and they're negotiating with us. Cool. I guess the American people, would have just moved on if that was the case. But that's not the case. We were told that that's going to be the case. Now they're not surrendering. Now we've got 2,500 Marines there. And to add insult to injury, we don't even know what Iran is targeting in the other nations of the Gulf states. People say that our bases over in the region have been obliterated. They've been obliterated. No, I don't think they've been obliterated. Qatar, a U.S., friend of the area, they came out publicly and said that, I guess at least in Qatar, but that no, Iran has not been targeting U.S. bases. They've been targeting Qatari oil and liquid natural gas infrastructure. So I'm sure that it's both. I'm sure I've been on bases in Afghanistan where, primitive guerrilla methods with old Chinese rockets could successfully hit a base and potentially kill people. So I'm sure that an Iranian rocket would hit a U.S. base. But just because the other Gulf states with big-time oil infrastructure are siding with the United States of America with this offensive against Iran, it makes more sense that Iran would target soft targets at their neighbor's door to weaken them economically just the same, right? So I don't know how much percentage of anybody's oil they're getting from Qatar, but if the Iranians are pissed off enough and they're launching rockets at Qatar to take out their infrastructure because they're siding with the U.S. in this whole thing, well, now you've screwed up the oil prices for whoever buys that oil. That's gone up. Qatari economy goes down. Other people's oil prices go up. And so I'm sure that it's a little bit of both. But we have so many people talking about this from so many different directions. And I'm not even talking influencers, podcasters, or the like. I'm just talking, you see actual footage of other world leaders getting up and saying, we've hit their bases. And then the other one saying, you didn't hit their base, you launched a rocket into our oil field. And then we hear what we hear in America on legacy media. And so, who the fuck knows what's real? Who knows what's real? I'm sure it's both. I'm sure that we've taken casualties on U.S. bases in other Gulf states. But I would bet that Iran would be hitting its neighbor's oil infrastructure as well, if not more, as they would see it, something of like, I don't know, a punishment. Anyway, so Trump administration's in hot water over this. Absolute hot water. This is the American people are getting this shit from both sides, man. We're getting hit from both sides. No pun intended, but we're getting hit from the left and the right. We're getting hit with the war escalating in Iran, not seeing any way of getting out of it, really, truly. With the exception of just throwing our hands up and saying we're done, and let the fucking chips fall where they may. The American people could have gotten behind, like I said, a quick wham bam, thank you ma'am. Oh my God, we hit Iran, oh my goodness, and then a few of our bases over in the region were hit. Oh my gosh, some military members were killed by Iran in another country. Oh my goodness, but then they would forget about it by dinner time and the next 24-hour news cycle comes around and nobody would give a fuck. But that's not what's happening. What's happening is the American people are getting drugged into another big bag of bullshit. Side note, that's what you should call this stuff. Joe Biden I call it the 3B conspiracy. I want to know who's behind the Joe Biden's Build Back Better that nobody fucking wanted. But then everybody got behind Donald Trump's big, beautiful bill. When all the while, this whole thing should just be entitled America's Big Bag of Bullshit. We don't want this shit in Iran. It's very clear that they could never have stood up to us. It's very clear. And so we're getting hit from that side. And then from this side, we're getting hit by the fucking Democrats with all the lack of DHS funding. We've got tornadoes in the Midwest. FEMA is under DHS. FEMA don't got no money. ICE has no money to deal with any of the deportations. And now TSA, TSA, like, people are quitting. They're quitting. Hundreds of TSA people are quitting. The line to get through airport security at major airports is nearly 3 hours long in some major airports. And so the Democrats are hitting us with that bullshit. And it is the motherfucking Democrats doing that. It is. Because Trump. Even if the Democrats were to win the midterms and restore all this funding and then just be, okay, well, it's only okay if we do it. Well, the American people are going to see that, and that's not going to bode well for you in the long run. Even if you win the midterms, and if that's your move, people are going to look at it and say, whoa. It hasn't been that long for us to fucking forget that Trump was trying to get, but because Trump. Just because he's in there. Look, man, the thing in Iran is not doing that fool any fucking favors as it is. If the Democrats want to look like any sort of hero here, get the goddamn Department of Homeland Security funded, get our airplanes and our reclamation projects. Not that FEMA does a good job, but for God's sakes, there's not enough hotels in the region. You need tents. Insurance picks up the property line, not the street. You need FEMA to get in there and do a bad job. But we need that funding. If the Democrats wanted to look any kind of good, they would get funding going, let Donald Trump do whatever the fuck it is what he's trying to do with ICE, and just let him ruin himself and his administration in this Iran thing. Because it will. If there's anything that's going to ruin the Trump administration, it's this Iran thing. At least in the public eye. If the Democrats definitely want to win in 2028, let this Iran thing play out in the worst way possible that it would, and looks like it will. And the American people in 2028 would then look and say, this motherfucker said no more new wars, no regime change wars, and now we're back in the Middle East. So yeah, America would vote for the other side if that was the case. But for whatever reason, Republicans are playing war games and Democrats are playing political games. And the American citizen is just fucking stuck in the middle. And the only thing that all this is going to do is make the American people turn our backs on the federal government at large. We already don't like either party. The whole vote for Trump was, a vote. The vote for Trump was more a vote against Kamala Harris than it was a vote for Trump. Let's be honest. Not only that, but the 2020 election is fucking shady. It's kind of shady. I'm not saying that there's any evidence. I'm saying it's fucking weird. It's weird. Doesn't add up. So Marjorie Taylor Greene breaks ranks. Thomas Massey. This is all while Donald Trump's the president. He betrays what he did campaign on. No new wars. No regime change wars. So yeah, you get people starting to resign. Because you're the one, at this point, Donald Trump can stop this right now or continue it. But the American people are getting hit from that end. And then we got Chuck Schumer and the fucking whiny, pissant Democrats dicking around in the Senate. Meanwhile, fucking up the everyday travel for tens of millions of American citizens. So the vast majority of America agrees that we need voter ID, the SAVE Act. The vast majority of Americans say that they would like to see the SAVE Act passed. And so regardless of what party you're in, it is your job as the politician hired and paid by the citizen. It's your job to carry out our want, not your political fucking agenda. America wants the SAVE Act passed. We want clean elections where only U.S. citizens can vote. Provable U.S. citizens. We want that. And we don't want to have our spring break, summer vacations, family weddings, etc. fucked up because Trump. Because you don't want to reopen funding because Trump. I think there is something that's either been raised to the Senate or passed, something like that, where they were saying that politicians can't have a fast pass or whatever it is. They can't be ushered to the front of the line. I do think that as we sit here on Friday, I think that we're going to see Congress in D.C. all weekend. Because this shit needs to get figured out. This has to happen. You don't get to go home. And I think I also saw something that somebody proposed that each day that this continues from this weekend forward, Congress stops getting paid. And goddamn, can't we all get an agreement with that? You want to hold up and close everything down? Well, then you get closed down too. So make them stand in the back of the line. If you're a leader, you stand behind your people anyway, literally and figuratively. You got their back. So shit, if this is what a 3-hour wait looks like, god dang, at least you've got to deal with reality. That'd be good for you. So it looks like Congress is going to be there all weekend doing whatever it is that they're going to do. And then hopefully this whole stand at the back of the line, no more going to the front of the line thing. Hopefully that's real. And then hopefully, I think this budget did pass that nobody in government's going to get, nobody in the federal government involved in this is going to get paid until this shit is resolved. So one can hope. I think Benjamin Netanyahu must be alive. You know, it did come out that a few of those proof of life videos were AI, they were fake. I think one of them, one of the first ones was fake. The one of him in a coffee shop was proven to be fake. The one at the ranch or the winery or whatever the hell it was, or wherever the hell he was, I think that was fake. But it has been said, as of today, Friday, March 20th, Benjamin Netanyahu has been in front of the camera as Benjamin Netanyahu in front of people giving speeches addressing Israel. Well, here's the fucking fishy part about that. Never at any point in any of these speeches over the last few days where he has supposedly stood in front of people and given speeches, you don't see the audience. There's no questions. There's no murmuring. So, I'm at this point, I think I'm going to still err on the side of, I think this guy's fucking dead. because there was also a video that came out that I believe is real. I do not believe that this one's AI. First of all, I would like to start by saying, like, I do believe that it's a real thing that world leaders have basic body doubles. They've got doubles. You know, I think famously George W. Bush had a body double that the news was all Twitter painted about there for a hot minute. And then we remember tall Biden, right? You know, 6 inches taller with a healthy walk and a nice stride upstairs. We know that. I don't know who the hell would look like Trump. I think he's a one-off. But then even that thing you've seen on X this past week about where it looks like somebody saw Jeffrey Epstein in Florida. Meanwhile, it's this guy that just looks strikingly similar to him. Definitely isn't Jeffrey Epstein. What does he call himself? Palm Beach Pete or some shit like that. So I think that this thing with, I even met somebody last week, from Missouri, not Arkansas, but swear to God, looked and sounded just like Bill Clinton. So, you know, everybody's got a doppelganger. I'm sure that world leaders have doubles. And this one video that came out of Netanyahu standing behind a podium giving a speech, now I believe he was speaking in Hebrew, so I don't know exactly what he was saying, but it does seem that he was kind of swiftly ushered off the stage because he said something that he shouldn't have said in front of a camera that was on, and nobody knew that the camera was on or some shit, and so he was caught saying something that was not good for him to be caught saying on some kind of broadcast. And so then people are saying that it sounds like that was not Benjamin Netanyahu, that was a body double. Now, Benjamin Netanyahu's brother did die. He did die. His house got hit. Netanyahu's brother's dead. So I think that this whole Netanyahu thing, I think that the jury is still out. I think that shit is pretty fishy about the Benjamin Netanyahu thing. So they say he's alive. I'll believe it when I see him. There was also a video of him walking through a hall with an American politician, but I believe that video was AI as well. I will believe that Benjamin Netanyahu is alive when I see him on one of the United States legacy media outlets walking into the White House to meet Donald Trump, shaking the US president's hand in person. I will then believe that Benjamin Netanyahu is alive. At this point, because of AI, and you know, there's also been two different claims that I've seen online, specifically on X, albeit on X, but here's my problem, that they both at separate times claimed that Benjamin Netanyahu died on March 8th in an Iranian strike. Two different pages, same claims, same dates, and there's been no Grok corrections and there has been no community notes that say that that's not true. So until that guy shows his wrinkly fucking face on Fox News touching the President of the United States of America's hand, full real, I am going to just kind of err on the side of, I think that guy is probably dead. And which would probably be not a bad thing for the world. Benjamin Netanyahu is proven to be a very bad guy. You know, the Greater Israel Project is true. He wants to expand Greater Israel. Very Hitlerian thing to do. If this war continues, he can stay in power through Israeli politics. The war continues. He stays in power. So he's, this guy, Benjamin Netanyahu's a bad guy, and he's not a good ally to the United States of America. I guess maybe I could get behind being an ally to and with Israel, but not with a guy like Benjamin Netanyahu in the driver's seat. I think that guy's a bad guy. I guess we'll continue to reserve judgment on Bibi. That's really all I had for today. But I do want to close. I want to finish this up with a little story. So I was with a friend last night having dinner, and I told him it's not that I believe in simulation theory. Simulation theory really didn't come out until, these tech nerds and video games. In which case, play The Sims. Boom, simulation theory. You're God, you get to build everything, and you can let them be autonomous, or you can control every move. And all the while, the reality that you sit in and can see it's all just a simulation. So I don't believe that we're in the Matrix. But I do believe that we are in a Truman Show. At this point, I think, thank God for the internet, because the internet has exposed so much bullshit with the legacy media and news that we have been told for decades. I would like to just kind of mention what happened here in Mexico a few weeks back. Nemesio Osajuera Cervantes, aka El Mencho, leader of the Jalisco New Generation cartel, was supposedly killed. However, I have seen some very, very compelling reporting from English-speaking journalists, Mexican journalists living here in Mexico, covering war zones and cartels and things. And so these folks have been on ground, and they've seen battlegrounds here in Mexico when there's been a fight between the Army or the Marines or the National Guard and the cartels. And when these folks, and I've seen a bunch of the footage, I've seen a bunch of the reporting, when these folks go to Tapalpa, they go to Tapalpa, and first of all, none of the residents heard any, none of the residents murmured or said anything or ever even heard that El Mencho was anywhere near Tapalpa, or let alone a couple blocks down the street at the country club. And then when you go to the area where El Mencho was supposedly hunted down and detained, wounded, there's cabins up there, but there's no security, and the cabins aren't all fucked up. I mean, they're fucked up because some of them haven't been cleaned, and so there's still guest residue everywhere, the broken window here and there, but it seems to just be something else breaking the window, not a bullet, because there's no bullet holes all over the place. There was no casings. There were full rounds found, but no casings. And the whole area was torched, burnt to the ground. But again, no signs of an actual fight. Nemesio Cervantes was a billionaire. It is reported, and this is a big gap, but it's reported that Jalisco New Generation's annual income is anywhere from $3 to $40 billion a year. Now, in the United States of America, we can't even get our own billionaire business and political criminals into a court, right? We have criminal ultra millionaires and billionaires. We've got criminals that won't even come off of their fucking yacht. So you mean to tell me that we can't touch our American billionaires, but the Mexican government, aided by only intelligence by America, but the Mexican government can actually get one of the richest men in the world? When I say billionaire, I'm talking billionaire dollars, not billionaire pesos. If you've got dollars, billions of dollars, you've obviously got billions of pesos. But I'm talking US dollar billionaire. Nemesio Cervantes, leader of CJNG. Now, apparently, there was a service, closed casket, family was there was some weeping, there was the whatever. But there's a lot of unanswered questions there. And everything that I see, and when you think about that, and think about the fact that El Mencho had faked his own death once before, right? And for something about involving his son and I think in the Bay Area, something California or whatever. But, El Mencho has faked his own death before. This isn't the first time. And he's one of the richest men on the planet. Not one of the richest men in Mexico, one of the richest men on the planet. So, I happen to think at this time, I think that he's probably sitting somewhere in Belize or Guatemala, safe, secure, still close to home, but not too far away. But the whole thing fucking stinks. Let's talk about Jeffrey Epstein a little bit too. It's very interesting that, let's start with the guard, who was literally paid to take a nap on duty. So this bitch takes a nap, has, I think, more than one transfer of $5,000 going to her bank account. One of the transfers flagged. And then moments before Jeffrey Epstein's death, she does a search on who's Jeffrey Epstein. So she's paid to take a nap. She gets, whatever money transferred into her bank. She makes this search. All the while, cameras are going down. And then there's also other people that work in the prison saying that not a unauthorized, but an unscheduled passenger van pull in. Look, this is all true. You can't just Google search, did Jeffrey Epstein leave in a passenger van from the prison? You can't Google search that, because it's going to come up with some bullshit like there's no credible evidence. So what you need to do is you need to dig into the jailer. You need to dig into the guard that fell asleep. You need to dig into that. Then you need to look at the Epstein file, because this shit is in the Epstein files. This is on government websites. So cameras are down, unscheduled van with military people show up, and other people that work in the jail say that they saw Jeffrey Epstein leaving the prison, getting in this van, and driving away with military personnel. So, all that to say, I think we're living in a Matrix. Or, I'm sorry, in a Truman Show. I think that we're living in a Truman Show. I think that there is so much crazy shit that has been put in front of our faces, and we're told what's going on, None of it's fucking true. And I think that people like Jeffrey Epstein or Nemesio Cervantes are ghosts. I think that they are real, true blue ghosts. And when the fucking heat is on to them, whoever's in charge of those guys pulls the plug. These guys can build governments and topple governments. These are just the two that we know about in America, right? So, you know, El Mencho, Nemesio Oseguero Cervantes, aka El Mencho, literally built a government. The CJNG is not a cartel. It's a fucking government with a military. Their highest leaders control the government officials in the cities and towns of Mexico. They are the government. Another thing is when you look at CJNG, when El Mencho was killed, there was no fracture. If it's a cartel, it fractures all the time. There's infighting all the time. I mean, there is no such thing as Sinaloa anymore because we got the leader. CJNG went in and just gobbled it all up. So, El Mencho's dead, but there's no infighting, there's no fracture. Yeah, you had a couple of the guys, one guy, El Yogurt, come out and say he's taking charge. And then there was another thing about how El Mencho's stepson was going to be in charge. Meanwhile, we don't actually know who's in charge. The family just said, nope, stay the course, this is what's going to happen. And everybody got in line. And you taking out El Mencho has not destabilized Jalisco New Generation Cartel. So, in El Mencho's position of a ghost, he's a builder. And somebody like a Jeffrey Epstein is a destroyer. He can destroy governments. And we're seeing that right now, in real time, in my humble opinion. So, I think we've been living in a Truman Show, and I think we're at the end of the movie where we're rowing the boat into the painted wall. I guess all I can say is thank God for the internet, and I hope you guys watch the whole thing to hear that end part. Because, you know, when it comes down to the Trump administration, the betrayal to his voters with this Iran thing, the betrayal to other cabinet members that he appointed, you know, Tulsi Gabbard, you know, a woman of principle. I think, you know, I think she could resign. I think over the weekend, you know, maybe 2 more weeks possibly, the further that this Iran thing goes, I think that we'll see a Tulsi Gabbard resignation. Lauren Boebert's out. MTG is out. Thomas Massey, still in Congress, but he's out. Qatar is telling you that, nope, Iran's definitely bombing us, not U.S. bases. You know, nobody can travel across America easily at all. Who knows if Benjamin Netanyahu's alive? And I think that thank God for the internet, because we deserve to know. We deserve to know what the fuck is going on. So, happy Friday, everybody. Thank you so much for everybody liking and subscribing and watching. I appreciate it. Uniquely Unqualified Podcast, episode 11. We will see you next week with more Take 2 episodes. Have a great weekend.